All right, everybody, welcome to the new normal. My name's Andrew Mayer, but then I hope you might know that. If this is your first time here, I podcast as regularly as I can around experiences in the digital space. Today, I've got a really interesting interview partner, Annette Franz, based out of California. She is founder and CEO of cxjourney.com. That's the website, so CX Journey. She's a customer experience specialist. She's been doing it, I think, longer than I've been doing it. That's a good thing. She consults companies about strategy and customer experiences there. There's so many things. She's written a lot. If you look her up on the web there, you'll see all kinds. She writes a whole lot. She blogs all over the place. Lots of different publications there. She's got a book out. We're going to talk about that in the interview coming up here in just a second there. But she is also currently a interim chief customer officer at a company that she's working for, also working to hire the full-time chief customer officer. So she's back doing some pragmatic work there within companies, and we'll have to see what she might share and write about that in the near future. We just had a great conversation. It's fun. The funny thing is that you won't see, or obviously see anything in the podcast, is I refreshed her memory. 8 years ago, I started a Twitter conversation with her where I asked her to come on my podcast 8 years ago, and she kind of ghosted me politely back there. And I reminded her of that today by showing her a screenshot of our tweet conversation, and that was quite amusing there. So I hope you enjoy the interview here. It's quite lighthearted. It's interesting. Talk a little bit about what she's seen happen. How do we improve the understanding of customer experience in companies there? She's got a really grand example of a change that a company made, a very large company made during the pandemic in order to address problems they were having with experiences of their own customers there. So listen towards the end of that, the interview there, you'll hear that piece there. So great conversation. Finally got to talk to Annette. Really, really fun and a great person. You should follow her on LinkedIn, Twitter, or those places that you might be. A bit about me. For the last couple of weeks, I've gone dark. Dark. I don't mean in a negative sense, but dark as I've gone on a real deep dive of user experience designing. And I found a Google course that I'm doing, an incredible accelerated version of it for myself here, where I'm learning to build websites and mobile applications, but use a process of understanding the customer user of an application there, iterating on it, designing on it, understanding their processes, how they would use it here, all the way through to testing it with friends and family, which is sometimes a little embarrassing. They give really, really candid feedback, but I thank them all. But of course, they don't listen to my podcast here. And I try to use a little bit of that example here in our podcast interview today about user experiences. Like, when do customers get involved in helping to define improved customer experiences? Or is it typically just internal people in the business there? So I bring that up in the conversation, and Annette has a very clear opinion on what that means, on how the customers are involved and when they should be involved and how they're involved there. And that was just really, really fun. So I've got a little dark. I'm going to be putting out some of my information on my website, andrewfmayer.com. If you're interested, you can go over there and check out my blog posts on user experience design. Also, you can subscribe to my newsletter, things like that. As always, I have to put this part in here. If you enjoyed this podcast here and you want to leave me a review on Apple, that's greatly appreciated there. Share it with somebody who might be interested in this. I try to keep things lighthearted and fun, and sometimes I talk too quickly here, but let's get over to the meat of this conversation here. I'm talking with Annette Franz, based out of California, with cxjourney.com. Let's go. Thank you for coming onto this episode of The New Normal. At first, this is really bad podcasting, but I'm going to share my screen, which of course nobody listening to this podcast is going to be able to hear or see, a screenshot from a Twitter DM exchange that began in December of 2012, where I tried to get Annette to come on my podcast. And she's like, oh yeah, that's cool. I actually like writing more than I do this. Maybe next year. Well, this ended in February of 2013, and it's today, 2021, and I finally have you on my podcast. And what I wanted to ask you in 2012 is still my same question today.
All right.
In the world of poorly designed websites, phone services that you get dropped, they can't help you, they transfer you, do not reply emails that you get, all these bad experiences that are out there for users and customers today. Why are still so many customer experiences broken?
They are. They definitely are. And it's a great question. And I think it really has to do with the fact that businesses don't put customers where they ought to be, they don't recognize that, or they do, but they don't, recognize that that's who they're in business for, why they're in business for customers, because of the customer. And they just are more focused on the outcome than the means to that outcome. And the means to that outcome is designing and delivering a great experience. It's building products and services that will help your customers solve problems for your customers. Instead, they find customers for their products, and that's backwards. It's backwards. It's like, hey, we've got this great widget, we've got this great thing, come buy it, and then they just assume that people are going to buy it. And it's challenging too when you mentioned their website, you mentioned the call centers are calling for customer service. It really is challenging because I don't know what these businesses are thinking. I really don't, because if you make things difficult for customers, they're going to go away. They're going to go elsewhere. So yeah, so that's at the heart of it. That's what I think it is. I think it's really about the fact that they don't really recognize, air quotes, recognize that they're in business because of and for the customer. And if we don't do things right and do the right things, they're going to go away.
But you and I have been circling around this same subject for a long time. Yeah. And that's why I reached out to you back in 2012, back in the days of a lot of Twitter tweet chats and things like that were going on. Yeah. I don't want to, I'm not trying to be disrespectful because I'm in the same position here, but we've been saying the same thing for as long as we've had, particularly the digital part of the world. So as soon as phone systems in the 80s and 90s were horrible back then, but they got the job done. You could talk to somebody at some point, even if you waited 45 minutes at your bank to get somebody on the line there. The companies are focused on their outcomes, as you said, right? Their outcomes are their profits, right? They're selling their goods. The customers, some of them might be going away. People still complain. Which one was it? Was it American Airlines or who broke the guitar story?
Oh, United Airlines, yeah.
United Airlines back in the day, right? That made all kinds of noise, and people are going to stop flying United. Well, United is still around, and so customers keep coming back. So how much pain has to be inflicted on a company? Or I'd like to turn the question around differently. We as consumers, customers ourselves, are we guilty of just saying it's just the way it is? I want that widget. I want that doohickey. I'm going to buy it anyway, even though the experience is going to be bad.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it, right? And we do go away if it's too painful, right? But I do think it's a part of it. I think we have sort of come to the resolution that this is how things are, and this is how things have always been, and nobody's going to change it, but I need that product or I need that service. I like that widget, so I'm gonna keep going there. I'm guilty of it. I still, I'll give an example. My mortgage company, terrible service last year. There were just so many issues, and I kept saying, I'm going to refinance. I'm going to get out of this. And then I was just like, that's just painful. It's just too painful. It's too much effort to do, so there are some of those things, some of those services where it's just too much effort to, switch banks or switch more, even to switch cell phone providers can be a pain, right? So some things are too painful to switch, and we just say, okay, fine, I'm going to just stick with it. But other things, shopping, retail products, if there's a brand that, does something wrong or offends you or whatever it is, you can drop that brand right away. And that's an easy, fix kind of thing. But yeah, for some of the bigger products and services, you just go, okay, well, here we are. I'm stuck, and this is just how it's always going to be. So, or we think, the grass isn't necessarily greener on the other side, right? It's okay. So I'm going to switch. It's going to be the same pain there that it is here.
Fatalism.
Yes.
It's like this everywhere. Doesn't matter. It's just horrible. I think.
But to your point, why though? Why is it still that way? We've I've been in this, I've been in this space for next year will be 30 years, and working with so many different companies. And, part of it is, it starts from the top to leadership. I remember years ago, speaking of Twitter chats and people that you meet on social media years ago, I had an exchange with a gentleman, and we talked about what do we do? Why are these things, how will these issues go away? And I said, well, leadership. I think it's leadership. I think that, and even with different brands, as they get new CEOs or they get new executive teams, do the people that come in, whether man or woman, whoever it is, do these people who are leading these companies get it? Do they get that you've got to focus on the experience and make the experience better, or are they just, again, focused on the outcomes? And so we going through this conversation and talking about leadership, and I said, maybe that's the problem. We just have to wait until new leadership comes along, and sometimes that's the fix. Look at Delta Airlines. Speaking of airlines, right? Their CEO right now is, he's amazing. He turned that airline around years ago. And, so it really does depend who the leader is, who the CEO is, or who the executive team is. But what happens after he leaves? Will somebody carry on that legacy, or will things go downhill? So.
Well, I know we work with companies that have legacy companies that weren't born digital, have a disadvantage in what we typically call silos, and there's information separation and departments. I'm not responsible for this, and what they do over there in marketing, we never hear. Those stories we've known, and they still exist, and we do. They are truly hard to do, and that's where senior leadership would have to do something fundamental to make change there. But there are incremental improvements that can be made that doesn't need a CEO or a chief customer officer to mandate it. And sometimes, and many companies are doing that. I don't want to make this conversation that we're just poo-pooing on all bad experiences everywhere. There's plenty of improvements that are happening there. Often they're happening because companies want to save money or something, and to keep the same amount of revenue with the less effort, so they have more margin and things like that. But so there are things improving. What kind of suggestions do you have for businesses that or people working in businesses? I mean, people that are listening to my podcast are middle managers in customer care centers, technologists that deal in the technology there, that they might be able to upwardly share to their management on changes that could be made. But when I put that question together, I thought, you wrote a book on this 2 years ago called Customer Understanding: 3 Ways to Put the Customer in Customer Experience and at the Heart of Your Business. And what I found interesting in there, because I'm doing a Google user experience course right now, because I got bored and I needed to learn something new, and learning how to build digital products from a user experience perspective here. But in your book, you cover 3 topics: surveys and data, personas, and journey mapping.
Right.
All of those are in the user experience portions there too. We call the surveys and data to be called research. Personas mapping, task mapping, journey mapping, similar ideas there. One piece I was missing though, and maybe you've got another book coming, is what I've been learning, which I found was interesting because in 25 years I was doing this professionally, I never did it, was when do we bring the customer into the conversation to do what in UX is called usability testing, where you give them a prototype, they go through it, they give you feedback, or you videotape them going, interacting with it there. And I'll give you a quick example from a week ago. I requested some documents from the local government here. I needed some architectural diagrams for my house. I got them yesterday, a big package full of printouts, architecture diagrams, and I got a digital a copy of it as well there, which was great. But it's on a CD-ROM. Um, the journey was absolutely correct. The customer could probably use a digital copy, doesn't always want to have these massive sheets of paper around there.
Yeah.
So the journey was well defined in 2012 to burn on CD-ROMs and mail them out to the customer out there. I don't have a CD-ROM drive in my house, so I've got to go find a neighbor who's got an old laptop out there. So my question is, when or if do customers ever get involved in the customer experience designing process?
Yeah. Well, I have two answers for that. The first one is they're involved every day. They give you feedback, they buy or they don't buy. So they're involved every day. The other answer is, those three things in my book are all about bringing the customer in, and, data, listening is about getting customer feedback, however you get that. That's surveys, it's online reviews, it's social media, that kind of thing. Personas, obviously, those are research-based. We're talking to customers, we're interviewing customers, we're taking the time to understand them. And the journey mapping, we bring customers in and map with the customers. In all of those instances, the customer is involved in, designing the experience, right? And especially, in journey mapping, we do, then the next step is, or the last step in my 6-step process is all about implementation. And that implementation is testing, creating a prototype of the experience, testing it with customers, making sure that's working, that's the new ideal experience for them, and then, launching it, however you want to do that. But yeah, the customer that's absolutely the point of the book is, the customer has to be involved. That's the point of putting, quote unquote, the customer in customer experiences, bringing them in through all of that to help them design or redesign the experience.
But I don't see that being done often, right? It takes special mediators like yourselves and those in that role to work with. This is complicated to do, right? A mid-sized company is not going to have the talent typically to understand how to do all this. When they read a PDF around this, or they read your book, some of it will say, yeah, that's logical. I kind of get it. It's not, this is not rocket science we're talking about here, but applying it and doing due diligence is complicated. It takes insight, it takes experience to do all that. And I don't see 100,000 Annette Franzes in the world out there working with companies every week in and out, improving this year. And I think mostly it's happening with a couple of members of a company sitting around a round table. Well, in Corona times, they're on a Zoom call perhaps, but sitting around a table there and just shuffling some ideas around and spitting out, version 29.
Yeah, and it's there really are a lot of companies doing this right now. I'm right now, I'm the immediate past chair of the Customer Experience Professional Association, right, the CXPA, and we've got 4,000 some members who do this work day in and day out, right, for their organizations. The clients that I work with, they've got teams of people who are doing this, and it's not just one CX professional, it's tiger teams, right? They've got people from other departments who are involved in doing this work. I'm mentoring someone right now, and in her organization, she's leading the charge, and she's got different skill sets or different levels of people who are involved in doing this work. And yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And I always say that improving the customer experience isn't really about adding more work for people. It's about doing things better and more efficiently and more effectively, and doing it if you're doing it for the right reason, right? If you do it for the reason that, hey, this is about and for the customer, and that's why we're in business, then we're doing things for the right reason. Because if we're not, the way that I explain to people is, if you think that redesigning the experience is more work, then that's a problem, because clearly you're not doing things right to begin with. So let's do things right, and let's do them more efficiently by doing it for the customer. So there, especially here in the States, I think there are a lot of businesses that are doing it. It is hard work. It is a lot of work, because you really have to get the whole organization on board. Everybody's got to be involved in some way, shape, or form. So yeah.
Well, keep going at it. I wrote a blog post at the end of 2020 no, the end of 2019. So before Corona, and I did sort of a 10-year look back, because in 2010, before you and I met on Twitter, I started another Twitter account, which was called Service Please 20 back in the day, because I was working under the name of Service Please, and that name was taken, and so I added 20 to the end, and because it seemed clever to me, because I had a mission that by the end of 2020, I was going to make fundamental change in the industry of digital customer experiences. And at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, I did a bit of a review and look back, and basically I said I failed. I failed my mission that I had of making big changes, knowing, like you and others in the industry, knowing what is possible, and it's not really super heavy lifting sometimes. It's just little things that could be done. Some of them are big, some are hard, some are expensive, some won't be done because there's some, ancient dinosaur server somewhere in a farm that can't be talked to, whatever. But there's a lot of things that can happen there. And so I wrote this article and said, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. How do we really lift this up? And I think, sure, there's always these great, landmark companies we can look at, and they show off these great experiences. They've these great improvements here, whether it's a Delta or whether it's, Amazon born. I've had great experiences on Amazon when I try to contact them, and it's just amazing. And knowing the technology is like I do, I can just imagine all the different criteria it's going through before it's making it. It's just, that's smart, and I'm impressed by it there. I think it's great. It's not scalable to almost anybody else. That's not an Amazon or an Apple or something of that size there. How do we make this CX thing, this customer experience thing, just more of a thing, right? What more has to happen?
Here's a really interesting thing, is have a pandemic.
Hey, you know what? We just had one of those.
Yeah, look at that. Well, here's the really interesting thing. At the beginning of the pandemic, I don't know how many customer experience professionals got laid off. They got repurposed. They got, whatever it was. But pretty quickly, they all got hired back, hired somewhere else. When those that were repurposed were put back to what they were supposed to be doing, because suddenly executives realized we need customer insights. Why are they buying? What are they doing? What do they need right now? Why are they hoarding toilet paper? Like all of these things, right? And suddenly the customer experience professional was the golden child of the organization, or whoever had the data, whoever had the insights. That was the golden child in the organization, and it's sad to say that it had to take something like that. But now suddenly businesses are focusing on the customer, and they're focusing on the employee, which is something that I've talked about since, my days at JD Power and Associates 30 years ago. It was, and nobody was like, yeah, let's focus on the employee. No, now people are, companies are focusing on employees, because suddenly it's like, hey, customers want to buy from companies that take care of their employees. They want to know their employees are safe and healthy and all of that, And so yeah, it really, last year really kind of shook things up for the space. I kept saying last year, I just hope this sticks, right? I just hope 2021, 2022, we're still doing these same kinds of things and people still find the customer important.
Have you got
I don't know if that answered your question, but
have you got any examples of what you've seen in 2020 or over the last year that we've been in a situation of companies that have made improvements, whether it's customer experience or employee experience or whatever it might be?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna share an experience from last week. This was pretty amazing. I was wowed. I haven't been wowed in an experience in a really long time. And the company is Target.
Okay.
And Target has always had, a pretty good experience, but, just like every other retailer, they went, curbside or pickup or carry out or whatever, whatever needed to be done in the last year. And last week I had gone on vacation for about 5 days, came back, needed to do some grocery shopping. But when I came back, it was a Tuesday. I was busy with, meetings and everything. And I was like, I need to get some groceries. I don't have time today to do that. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to order them online. And so I ordered them online, and you could either, depending on what you bought, you could either have it delivered, you could come in for pickup. You had a whole host of options of how you could get your groceries. And so I thought, well, I have about 30 minutes between meetings. I'm going to run over and pick it up. And so I selected pickup, and they said, okay, get a confirmation. It says, your order's going to be ready in 2 hours. The order was ready in 20 minutes. I got an email back saying it's ready for pickup, and I'm like, wow, these people shop fast. So I'm like, all right. So then it says, and I have the Target app on my phone. So on the app, I get a notification, pops up, says, your order's ready. As soon as you are on your way, just hit, I'm on my way. Mm-hmm. And it's also location based, so that they can see how far you're going, and they know when you get there. So I left the house at, I think it was 12:36. I pulled back into my garage at 12:51. That's how quick that was. And Target they're about 5-7 minutes away from my house. So as soon as I was near Target, the app popped up, and okay, you're here. Now just go park in. It told you, go park in the spot, and somebody will be out in just a couple minutes. When they come out, just give them your code. Just pop open your trunk. You don't even have to get out or anything. Just pop open your trunk, give them your code, and you're on your way. Literally, like I said, left the house at 12:35, 12:36, was back home at 12:51. That's how quick it was, and seamless. Like, wow. Okay, they know I'm here. Okay, they're out in 2 minutes. They load my car, and boom, gone. So yeah, that was seriously, I have not had a wow experience in a long time, and I was just like, man, that was easy. That was so easy.
And I'm wearing T-shirts that I made. This one's actually in German. Today. It says context. Okay. Yeah. It says context, and it's all about understanding who the person is, where they are, their situation. This is a little special in this case here, but it's that moment where the company has enough information on you. They know what you want. I mean, you made this easy for them, but they know what you want. They know when you want it there. You've given them access to your location information there, so they can see, they can calculate, quickly how much time they're going to need. I know we've got, IKEA's here that I'll say, go park in slot 37. So they don't even have to identify. They just park in there, and they're going to walk up and you drop it in the back of your car and things like that. It's just using all that information that's available to give that person this can go down as a world record for you, probably the fastest Target trip you've ever had in your life, right?
Oh, absolutely, guaranteed.
That one. But that's just so typical of what has been possible for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And it took crazy, right? Pandemic to even kick Target in the shins to get up and do it. Right? Yep. They could have done that kind of shopping 5 years ago. Yeah. And it would have saved them money, right? It would have probably attracted an additional type of customer who doesn't want to go into a Target maybe, or has 3 kids in the car, so I don't want to get out, and all those good reasons, those personas that they're missing at that time of day, they could attract like this. Back to your comment before, do you think that's going to stick with Target?
Yes, they say, and a lot of the retailers here have said, we're going to keep doing this. And I actually just read an article the other day that I forget what the percentage was of the retailers that are going to keep doing that type of service. Like you said, I think they've discovered a whole new, maybe even, like you said, a whole new audience, right? People that they never even knew would shop at Target or come to Target, or would come to Target if they didn't have, 3 kids in the car and all that kind of thing. So yeah. I think
they could open Targets now that don't have to have even a walk-in store.
Right.
It could be like the fulfillment center. That inside it's grocery store, but it's optimized for people working there. I don't want to compare it to an Amazon warehouse, but that kind of center. That you could have those pop-up things in locations where it's way too expensive to get the full-fledged store with all that real estate that it needs there. So you could replicate this experience in niche places that they can't reach today. And they could get new customers that don't typically come in or go by a Target in other neighborhoods, but provide that level of service to them. Quality of goods is there, level of service is there, seamlessness is there, just need a couple of pieces. All right, that's a great example. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, I'm living far away from a Target.
Aw.
Whereas I was brought up to call them the Targets down in the South,
Target, yes.
where I grew up. But last question for you. I
All
ask
right.
all my guests this question. What does innovation mean to Annette Franz?
That is a great question. I love that question. I would say it's really all about listening to your employees, listen to your customers, really understanding them, right? Understanding their needs, their pain points, the problems they're trying to solve, jobs they're trying to do, and then using what you learn. I mean, that's really key, obviously, using what you learn to develop something new, whether it's a product or a service or whatever it is, a process, something that's, better, faster, stronger, more efficient, whatever it is than ever before, right? Than what exists today. And provides you then with that competitive advantage. So it is all about, it's rooted, I think innovation is rooted in data. And it's using that data to, do things, new and improved.
I think your Target example is a good example of that, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the data was obvious. They weren't getting the foot traffic into the store. They knew what their objective is. They knew they had a customer base that would probably be interested in their product. That kind of stuff people need to live from, like toilet paper. And they looked at the potential ways of matching, of that journey. How could they adjust the journey to make it seamless there? Annette, it's been 8 years since I asked for you to come on a podcast here.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, these questions ripen with age. I hope it's not another 8 years before we connect together once again there. Where can people find you on the interwebs? I know you're in a lot of places, but where's the best place people go look for you?
Yeah, I love to connect with people on LinkedIn, but yeah, check out my website, cx-journey.com, and all my contact information is there too.
Thank you for your time. Hopefully it's sunny in Southern California over there. It's actually sunny here in Germany for a change.
Nice.
Thank you for your time today, and I wish you success. And I'll be watching you on the interwebs, what you write, what you put out, and cheering support and hopefully future success there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it.